The only reason that the incarnate God has come into the flesh is because of the needs of corrupt man. It is because of the needs of man, but not of God. And all his sacrifices and sufferings are for the sake of mankind, and not for the benefit of God himself. There are no pros and cons or rewards for God. He shall not reap some future harvest, but that which was originally owed to him. All that he does and sacrifices for mankind is not so that he might gain great rewards, but purely for the sake of mankind. Though God's work in the flesh involves many unimaginable difficulties, the effects that it ultimately achieves far exceed those of the work done directly by the Spirit. The work of the flesh entails much hardship, and the flesh cannot possess the same great identity as the Spirit, cannot carry out the same supernatural deeds as the Spirit. Much less can he possess the same authority as the Spirit. Yet the substance of the work done by this unremarkable flesh is far superior to that of the work done directly by the Spirit. And this flesh himself is the answer to all of man's needs. For those to be saved, the use value of the Spirit is far inferior to that of the flesh. The work of the Spirit is able to cover the entire universe, across all mountains, rivers, lakes, and oceans. Yet the work of the flesh more effectively relates to every person with whom he has contact. What's more, God's flesh with tangible form can better be understood and trusted by man, and can further deepen man's knowledge of God, and can leave upon man a more profound impression of the actual deeds of God. The work of the Spirit is shrouded in mystery. It is difficult for mortal beings to fathom, and even harder for them to see, and so they can only rely on hollow imaginings. The work of the flesh, however, is normal and based on reality, and possessed of rich wisdom, and is a fact that can be beheld by the physical eye of man. Man can personally experience the wisdom of the work of God, and has no need to employ his bountiful imagination. This is the accuracy and real value of the work of God in the flesh. The Spirit can only do things that are invisible to man and difficult for him to imagine. For example, the enlightenment of the Spirit, the moving of the Spirit, and the guidance of the Spirit. But for man who has a mind, these do not provide any clear meaning. They only provide a moving or a broad meaning, and cannot give an instruction with words. The work of God in the flesh, however, is greatly different. It has accurate guidance of words, has clear will, and has clear required goals. And so man does not need to grope around or employ his imagination, much less make guesses. This is the clarity of the work in the flesh, and its great difference from the work of the Spirit. The work of the Spirit is only suitable for a limited scope, and cannot replace the work of the flesh. The work of the flesh gives man far more exact and necessary goals, and far more real, valuable knowledge than the work of the Spirit. The work that is of greatest value to corrupt man is that which provides accurate words, clear goals to pursue, and which can be seen and touched. Only realistic work and timely guidance are suited to man's tastes, and only real work can save man from his corrupt and depraved disposition. This can only be achieved by the incarnate God. Only the incarnate God can save man from his formerly corrupt and depraved disposition. Although the Spirit is the inherent substance of God, work such as this can only be done by his flesh. If the Spirit worked single-handedly, then it would not be possible for his work to be effective. This is a plain truth. Though most people have become the enemies of God because of this flesh, when he concludes his work, those who are against him will not only cease to be his enemies, but on the contrary, will become his witnesses. They will become the witnesses that have been conquered by him, witnesses that are compatible with him and inseparable from him. He shall cause man to know the importance of his work in the flesh to man, and man shall know the importance of this flesh to the meaning of man's existence, shall know his real value to the growth of man's life, and, moreover, shall know that this flesh will become a living fountain of life from which man cannot bear to part. Though the incarnate flesh of God is far from matching God's identity and position, and seems to man to be incompatible with his actual status, this flesh, who does not possess the true image of God or the true identity of God, can do the work that God's Spirit is unable to do directly. Such is the true significance and value of God's incarnation. And it is this significance and value which man is unable to appreciate and acknowledge. Though all men look up to God's Spirit and look down on God's flesh, irrespective of how they view or think, the real significance and value of the flesh far exceed those of the Spirit. Of course, this is only with regard to the corrupt mankind. For everyone who seeks the truth and longs for the appearance of God, the Spirit's work can only provide moving or revelation and a sense of wondrousness that it is inexplicable and unimaginable, and a sense that it is great, transcendent, and admirable, yet also unattainable and unobtainable to all. Man and the Spirit of God can only look upon each other from afar, as if there is a great distance between them, and they can never be alike, as if separated by an invisible divide. In fact, this is an illusion given to man by the Spirit, which is because the Spirit and man are not of the same kind, and the Spirit and man shall never coexist in the same world, and because the Spirit possesses nothing of man. So man does not have need of the Spirit, for the Spirit cannot directly do the work most needed by man. The work of the flesh offers man real objectives to pursue, clear words, and a sense that he is real and normal, that he is humble and ordinary. Although man may fear him, for most people he is easy to relate to. Man can behold his face and hear his voice, and does not need to look at him from afar. This flesh feels approachable to man, not distant or unfathomable, but visible and touchable. For this flesh is in the same world as man,